of 2000 and has been a part of the packaging workflow team from the outset. First as an application support specialist for the southern region, and then as a product support specialist for the Prinergy PowerPack workflow solution. He became a Flexo technical specialist in 2004 in support of Flexo CTP installs and implementation. In 2009, he joined the Technical Applications Group as a printing specialist, providing install and training services for Kodak's packaging solutions for the flexographic market segment. As a member of the TAG team, he has worked to provide comprehensive workflow integration of Kodak software solutions for new and existing Kodak NX customers worldwide. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dominic.
Thank you very much, Laura. I appreciate the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dominic Ibarra, as Laura's mentioned, and I've been with Kodak for 10 years going now. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get started, and what we're going to do today is our agenda today is to kind of go over an overview of workflow, and just to kind of provide some context as to how we approach workflow and really how workflows are implemented throughout most facilities. Then we'll get into some of the Kodak solutions and then how they kind of fit into this same model. At the end, we'll have a summary of some of the features we discussed and some of the concepts we discussed, and then we'll have an opportunity for some questions. And if there's any specific features or questions about specific tools, we'll have a chance to go over them at that time. So the first thing I'd like to do is to discuss how workflows are organized. And I find that when we're discussing workflow and you start trying to talk about different products and how they compare to competitive products, that it's really better to put it all into a context of how a facility would be organized. And so we have this kind of model, and they all start with a RIP. And so you have some kind of engine. And what a RIP is a tool for converting files into raster data for output. And so everybody who has any kind of workflow system going back several generations will have some kind of RIP engine in there. It might have been a RIP feeding an image setter, might be feeding a proofer, might be feeding a CTP device of some sort, but everybody has some kind of standalone RIP or maybe a RIP that's integrated into a whole workflow. On top of that, you have a database. And we always talk about the database in our own systems and everything, but the more you look at how pre-press facilities work, the more you realize everybody really does have a database. People are using FileMaker Pro. A lot of customers might be using Excel to keep track of schedules, keep track of where files are living. You might have some kind of database system that is keeping track of where your files are, whether they've been archived or been moved or stored. A lot of people take files offline. And then you have storage, and then you have some kind of database system that's keeping track of them. The most crude form of a database would be someone's spiral notebook where they're writing down which CD they burned all their files to. Also, along with that is, with the RIP and the database, you do have an OS, and that's usually homing your file storage system. And what we've seen is you see such a wide variety of systems that store files. And usually there's some kind of bucket or large storage format that you can store files on, either on the RIP, if you have a more modern RIP, or what we've really seen lately in some of the more shops that haven't advanced as far as the latest Apple computers have just massive hard drives. And what customers are doing is they're actually just sharing out the hard drives to each other, and they're storing the files on the local drive, and then they just share from each other's computers and then access files that way. So everybody's attacking this the same way. It's just they all have different solutions. And automation is something that everybody utilizes to some level. The automation might be a certain person who can do things very efficiently, or it might be something as simple as a hot folder or some kind of executable script that automatically changes the file into CMYK, moves the file to a different location, changes its address, automatically burns it to some kind of media for taking it offline the system. So there's always some kind of automation working in the facility. And then obviously we have internet portals, and you have FTP sites, you have sharing solutions and different systems, mass transit type systems, where you can actually share files and communicate back and forth with remote people or remote customers. And then everybody's got their power tool. And the power tool is either that really advanced application that they're using to solve most of the most difficult questions, the most challenges they have. Another area you'll also see is that a lot of sites, the power tool is actually just a guy or a girl that's very, very good, very experienced, and you can pretty much just give them any file, and they can crunch through it, and they can figure out how to solve it. And so those are all things. And what you find is when you look at the whole workflow, if you look at any production facility, you'll find that all these components are there and they're all working. And what's really interesting is to see how they got to where they're going. You'll see is a lot of people have come here through just happenstance. The system's just kind of an ad hoc system that's been put together through legacy systems and through incremental improvements. But really, when you look at all that, the objective is you're trying, as a pre-press department, as any kind of manufacturing facility, you're trying to decrease costs. You're trying to increase your efficiency and reduce your cycle time. You're trying to differentiate yourself from your competitors, and you're trying to increase your margins. And that's the ultimate goal of this system. And all the tools and all the components and solutions that you have within any manufacturing facility and in any pre-press department are all tools that people are using to achieve these goals. So they all have their purpose. They've all gotten there for some reason. And that's, it's very helpful when we all come together and we understand how that's all been put together and why we're where we're at and how everything's working together. So we did a study, and if you look at how people are investing, you'll see that the bulk of the investment, almost regardless of the area you're in and what market segment you're in, the investment is always in efficiencies and productivity. And it seems to be that that's what people are looking for. And it just kind of reinforces that same concept and that approach. And that the whole point of all these tools and all these systems is to increase efficiency, increase throughput, reduce mistakes, and reduce costs. So we look at how Kodak does it. We kind of take that same model we were just talking about, and we kind of break it up into this kind of spoke system where our objective is to attack these solutions and attack these challenges everybody's facing, is to have an open environment, to have some kind of automation, a system that's scalable, that's complete, and modular. And these are all very important components because the idea is to not only provide a solution, but to also understand how our solution fits in with the workflow environment and the manufacturing process and see how it fits in with existing components. So we come into the Kodak system. We're going to go through some of the major components of the system and some of the major parts. We start here. This is kind of a high-level view, and this kind of shows you what everything can be if you went from soup to nuts, and this goes into digital presses and all kinds of devices and has remote proofing and everything. And so we're going to get into a little deeper here. So let's start with PowerPack. So PowerPack is basically the hub of the system. PowerPack is the engine that contains all the manufacturing and production tools. There's several different components within PowerPack, but in essence, PowerPack allows you to bring in customer one-ups, process the files, proof the files, step and repeat them for manufacturing, and then output to an output device or to a digital printing device. So it allows you to do all the actual manufacturing steps in the process. The major things we focus on in the PowerPack workflow is that it does have the ability to color manage everything, trap, proof, all the standard tools are there. We also get into automation. We have a specific step and repeat solution in Pandora, and we also can automate the layout application utilizing the Pandora engine. We work in a PDF format, and what that means is that we are actually able to edit the PDF files in the process, and that means we can trap the files, we can make changes to the files, and update the files in process. So we look at all the capabilities of PowerPack. It really is pretty comprehensive. It has every tool you would need in any production environment to be successful. You have all the tools necessary to trap files, to change files, compare files to other ones, to create white plates or varnish plates, to do your step and repeats, to lay out for proofing devices, to lay out for digital presses, to lay out for CTP devices. You have all the tools necessary to be successful in manufacturing. You can also work in different color spaces, such as CMYK plus device N colors, 4, 5, and 6 color spaces. The real strong tool of the Prinergy system is probably the automation system. And that's really where what we do is we really start to take the tool from simply being a toolbox of different tools and devices and implements that you'd use on your files, and we switch it over to be a system that increases the productivity and the efficiency of your department. And what we do is we start to address how can we do more, how can we make less mistakes. So let's look at automation. Now, to talk about automation, you got to kind of understand, how automation started. As pre-press departments started modernizing and they started going digital, you find that a lot of automation began with hot folders. And what hot folders were just a very simple script where a file would hit some kind of watch folder, or what they would call hot, a folder that has an action applied to it. And as soon as a file hit that action, something would happen to that file. It would either be moved, it would be copied somewhere, or it would be processed in some way. I remember we had a system where the files would be pulled over to another computer station. We called it the gateway. And so anytime a file hit that folder, it would just automatically be shot off into that direction. So the hot folders were very simple, and they had some kind of spring action to them, where they would actually act on an input. Then we moved into a second generation of automation, and this is more of like I would describe as a puzzle piece, where you could actually stack together or daisy chain several different actions together. And so instead of just a single hot folder with a single action, you could actually stack together these pieces and have it do several actions in a row. So you could have a file that not only just got copied, but it would get copied, it would get saved as a different name, and then it would get processed to maybe a printer of some sort, some kind of inkjet printer. So you would stack these copies, you'd stack these actions together like that. And the limitation of this is that you had to create a stack for every different scenario that you had in your manufacturing process. And then you had to initiate your file onto the correct stack. And once it went down that track, it was on there. So it's kind of like a train, where once you went on a certain track, you weren't able to make a left or a right. You had to stay on that track. They're very effective and very efficient systems. But now we've moved into, I guess, what you'd call a third generation of automation. And the third generation now is where we get into some kind of event-driven or contextual automation. So rules-based automation, as Kodak has implemented it, is this kind of third-generation way of doing automation. And what it's doing is it's using conditional logic, meaning that the systems have rules that are based on certain conditions, and then it initiates certain actions based on how the criteria meets the conditions that have been specified. A very simple example would be if you've got an output and you want to output at a 150-line screen and a 120-line screen. The system would analyze the file, and then based on the inputs you put into the file, you have these different fields you can fill in. Once the fields are filled in, you'd indicate if you want 120-line screen or 133. As soon as the RBA saw the system, it would then analyze the file, analyze the conditions, and say, okay, based on the information I'm seeing, I see it's supposed to use 120-line screen, so then I'm going to use process plan output conditions for 120-line screen. And if it saw 133, it would use a different output process plan. So instead of having to stack it and initiate it down a 120-line screen output path, it would actually take the file and move it towards the right output destination based on the information inside the file. You could then change it at the last minute and change it from 120 to 133, not have to change the track. The system would automatically redirect it to another track. There's several things you can automate with the RBA system. When you use the RBA system with Prinergy, it allows you to automate several different tasks and initiate and you can have several different inputs into it. You can use the system itself with some predetermined conditions, such as the file's done processing, the file's ready for proofing, the file's ready for output, due dates, etc. There's several different predetermined conditions. You can also have systems initiate it through an email or some kind of web service, an MIS service, or a customer service person can initiate an action based on a trigger that the system is monitoring. And you can also have, and then as you get into the very basics of RBA, you could actually write custom triggers and custom rules using Visual Basic. So the system becomes completely scalable and infinite at that point, where instead of just using the predetermined actions and items within the system, you can actually just write out your own custom code and customize it to what fits your manufacturing facility. So here's another example of one. And this one has got a file that would get initiated, and then it would look at it, and it would automatically go through this fork tree and make decisions. And every fork you see, there's a decision it has to make. And the system would then analyze the file, analyze the success of the previous step in the process, and then make the decision for the next step in the fork. And it would eventually end up going out to this one. It's going to send an email with either success, a warning, or an error to the end user, showing them what happened to the file as it was processed. What experience has been with RBA is when you look at how, as we were talking earlier, when you look at how workflows have been designed, they're designed to handle the most difficult and complicated tasks of any pre-press department. That's kind of how people invest their money and invest their dollars. They invested in the tool that fixes the most difficult problem they have. So what we found is most customers don't make mistakes processing complicated or difficult files. Most people, the harder the file is, the more difficult it is, the better they are able to handle it, because they've got all these tools and all these experiences and all these procedures in place to handle those situations. What you do, when you look at all the mistakes and all the waste that goes into a pre-press department, what you find is most of those mistakes are made in inadvertent output settings or inadvertent proofing, where a customer has made maybe a reverse print and it should have been a surface print, or they've output at 120 line screen instead of 133 line screen. And the reason is because, as we know in the packaging industry, your output situations can just get exponentially complicated. You end up with so many different scenarios based on distortion, based on surface or reverse, or different materials or different plates, different thickness of plates. You have all these different scenarios, and it creates a lot of noise. And so the operators make many mistakes just simply outputting and then outputting a second time consistently. Customers will often, they output the first time, but they saw a mistake, they fix it. They output again, and then the second time they chose the wrong angle set. They output the angles that the black came out at 45 instead of 37, or the black came out at 70, or cyan was at 75 instead of 105. And these are the kind of things that people are making mistakes. They don't make the mistakes in how to process a file. They make the mistakes in these mistakes in inadvertently select the wrong setting. Using the RBA system, it takes away that decision-making process for the operators. It actually says, okay, you're going to process the file, you're going to prepare the file, and then when the file is correct, you're going to let us know, and then we will then analyze the criteria for this file and output it correctly based on that criteria. So then you get a repeatable output process every time, and you can then determine ahead of time what the criteria is, and then you only get one output event based on specific criteria combinations. So if you select your criteria to be 133 surface print on a 067 plate, it's not going to output a 045 plate at 150 line screen. It won't allow that to happen. It's going to just give you an 067 plate on 33 line screen every single time. And that's the idea, and that's really where you start to see the benefits of an RBA system to a manufacturing facility. We look at the Pandora system. The step and repeat system of Pandora is a has two options to it. You have what you would call a manual step and repeat, which allows you to step any one-up or any graphic for printing. So you can step in lanes, you can step for different web configurations, for seamless, for sleeves. You can do all these things using either a manual step and repeat, where you step it across, you cancel top it, or you can have a predetermined size based on the dies, and you can have a CAD file feed in the Pandora system. It will then marry the graphics to the CAD and give you an exact step and repeat based on the manufacturing. Well, I call these all manual because the system still requires a user intervention, and so the user is still having to direct Pandora and control the step and repeat. The strength of Pandora really is in this versatility, though, in that it can handle virtually any step and repeat configuration and requirement. It also has smart marks, which is a system we've developed that allows you to have special marks on the plate that will adjust based on the conditions of the plate. Meaning that if you change your repeat, if you change your web width, the marks can automatically readjust themselves. You're not having to replace the marks. They're never anchored to any one point statically within the layout. They actually are dynamic, and they move around, they adjust themselves based on the conditions you've determined within the mark system. The TLA system is an automated layout system, and it's developed kind of as a combination of the RBA system and some of the other technologies we've been developing. And what it's doing is it's actually using the Pandora engine for step and repeat, but instead of having to use a GUI interface where the operator actually intervenes and controls how the layout is made and stepped and laid out, it actually will take instructions that you can create, and it will create a layout based on the instructions you give it. So if you tell it, here's the size of my cylinders, here's the tooth pitch, here's the web width, here's the file that we're going to be using, here are the marks we're going to be using, and then you just tell it to go ahead and make a layout, it will assemble a layout based on all those conditions and give you your final output. One last thing about Pandora, I'll come back for 1 second. The other thing is, since Pandora is integrated into Printergy, you're not ever working with a composite file. There's never a file that is the entire layout stepped together. So if you have three different one-ups, and you have 3 lanes of 6 around, you don't have a file that's 18 one-ups long. It's actually just all metadata. And then Printergy actually assembles the layout at the last minute when you want to go to output. So you're not creating multiple files or composite files that are moving around the system. You're actually only giving it instructions that Printergy then stores as a JT. And JTs are called job tickets. And it's the metadata that has all the instructions for layout. When you go to output, it reads the instructions, it assembles the layout, and it gives you one composite file for output. But the file is never living anywhere on the server or anywhere in the system as a composite file. This is important because this allows you to make last-minute changes. If you've got 3 different one-ups and you have 3 lanes, and you decide you want to run just 2 one-ups, and you want to run one of the one-ups in 2 lanes and the other one in the 3rd lane, all you have to do is just reassign, one of the one-ups to the 3rd lane, and then it'll automatically be updated. You don't have to go back into Pandora and then create a new layout and create a new composite file. The system is completely dynamic, and the files are always updating themselves. Now, Insight is the internet portal. As we talked before, most people are dealing with an internet portal of some sort, no matter how sophisticated or crude the system would be. They're dealing with an FTP site, or they're dealing with email or something where they are accessing, through the internet, they are communicating with files. Well, Insight is a solution for this because it's a customizable web portal that allows your customers to have the interface with your production environment. And the system provides file sharing services. It provides remote proofing, team collaboration on proofing. It allows files to be submitted and to be downloaded back to the customer and to be reviewed. and it keeps track of everything within its database so that you have reports of what's been happening, where the status is of files, and how things are working. The system feeds directly into Prinergy, so actions that are happening on Insight are then reflected within the Prinergy system. So your production environment is always reflecting what's happening even when customers are accessing it via the web. The other thing it does is it actually works both ways. So customers can submit into you, and then you can submit back to the customers for them to have access to it. I think the advantage of Insight is that it really does strengthen that relationship you have with the client. It really provides them a unique environment where they can really take advantage of the tools that you have in the manufacturing that are specific for them. Customers are able to store files and have access to them. They're able to see different jobs that are in production. They can see the status of a job that's in production. They can see the status of changes. You can have a job that's been submitted, and when it's ready, the printer can then send a notification to a customer and say, look, this job is ready to go. The customer might have 4 or 5 different people who have to approve it. You may have a copy check. You may have a color. Someone's going to check the color. Another person might check the die to make sure it's the right size. You can have all these things done, and the file will not proceed in production until it's received an okay from every group. This ties directly into the RBA system, where if you have a manufacturing facility with RBA running and action items are pending on this file, you can have it to where none of the actions are initiated until the file's received all the approvals from the Insight system. The system works completely transparent back and forth between the Insight system and the manufacturing in PowerPack. You can also then link the manufacturing in PowerPack. You can link it back into an MIS system. This is kind of another deviation off the Insight system. So instead of just going out to a web portal, you can actually have it linked up to your MIS system in customer service. The strength of this is then it allows you to then have it where the customer service people might be able to initiate jobs in production by giving it certain names or having it to where certain file requirements it initiates the job being is ready to go. The system will then grab all the files necessary for this job and put them in a single place, and then they're ready for manufacturing. It'll also allow you to have reports and tracking go back up the system and dump back into the MIS so you can see how many times a file was edited, how many times files were output, how many plates were made, and other ideas like that, so you can verify that your estimating systems are working accurately to what was actually happening in production. So in summary, what we're trying to do is we're really trying to work on that cost. We really want to take out the times where you have to do multiple steps, you have redundant steps, where you have people doing routine steps. You want to increase your turnaround, and you want to increase your efficiency. The most important thing to get out of this system is it really isn't an all or nothing. The idea is because we are approaching this with the mind of how the whole, we're very cognizant of what's going on in the pre-press department and all the other tools we may have in the facility. And really what you find is some of those tools, it might be an ad hoc workflow, and it might have several different tools from several different people, but some of those tools are very effective for that facility and for that customer, for that printer. And it's important that you emphasize what they do well and that you make them better at what they're already doing, and allow the system to come in and fill in the holes where they're weaker or they have shortcomings. So if they don't have a lot of file storage space and they're using several different FireWire drives attached to the back of computers, you can bring the Prinergy system comes in. It has a central server, and all the files can be stored in a central location. If you don't have a good FTP communication, Insight comes in, allows for seamless communication and file transfers and communication with your customers. If you're having trouble monitoring your output, the system can come in and it can control all the different outputs to all the different devices, give you reports of what's being output, how many times things are being output, and who's outputting it. So then it provides all those tools. But if you have very strong tools for doing specific kind of edits or some kind of warping or graphics to a one-up, then the system will allow you to continue to do that. We want our customers to be successful, and we want our customers to focus on what they do well. And the idea is we want to establish the infrastructure and bring it in so that the customers are not having to worry about the shortcomings in the system. They're only able to focus on the things they do well and the strengths of the system. So that's where the value statement comes in, is we're here to help. We're here to do what you really don't want to do or aren't able to do very well. And everything else that you do well, I think that's what you should continue to do. I don't know how many do's I just worked into that one sentence. But. And lastly, the service and support. And so we've gone through quite a few different tools here. And the important thing is to know is that we have an extensive network of people with experience in all these tools and how they've been applied and how they've been integrated at different sites. And so we have 24 hours coverage around the world. And it's very important to partner with us and to let us help you fit the system in and mold it to your facility so that we can find the best way to use our tools to complement what you're already doing. We're really not coming in here to give you a zero-sum game saying that everything you've done in the past, you have to go out the door and start using a new system. We really want to find a way to make it all work together. So in closing, the system is based on an integration where everything works together, everything communicates. There's no islands, there's nothing ad hoc in the system. The system has an automation system that increases your efficiency and reduces the decision-making steps and reduces them with careless mistakes people make. We have a support system. It helps you put it all together and apply it to how it fits in your facility. And then we have a wide variety of offerings. So we have offerings for any step of the manufacturing process and for all steps in production. I want to thank you, everybody, for your time. If you have any questions, I would love to discuss them for the rest of this session so we can discuss the questions, and if there's any specific features or tools that we'd like to discuss, I'd be happy to.
Well, Dominic, this is Dave Harridan, so thank you very much. Good presentation. That was really interesting. I learned a few things out of that. I thought I knew workflow pretty well, but that was pretty good. So if you do have a question, please feel free to go ahead and chat that in. Several of you have already entered some questions, so let's go ahead and get started with those. Dom, again, thanks for a great presentation. First question that came in was, what specific steps can you automate in the Kodak workflow?
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. You can actually automate, depending on the system, you can actually automate any step that is controlled by a Kodak-specific product. Meaning that if you have Insight, if you have a link system, you have PowerPack, and you have Kodak devices, output devices, you can automate any steps that those devices are able to perform. If you have another system, maybe a different MIS system or a different internet system, you can actually automate any step using XML code. So as long as you're able to code in a specific trigger, you can actually initiate any step in the process, in the manufacturing process.
Okay, that sounds great. How do you prevent a file from being automatically output before it's ready?
A file would be, what you would do is you would create conditions within the PowerPack system that have to be met before the file can proceed to the next step. And the example of this is what we do is we create actual fields in the system that require the operators to indicate that these tasks or these tasks have been completed. For a simple example would be you would create a field saying the file has been trapped. So then the file would come into Printergy, it would be processed, it would be proofed, and then when you're ready to go to final output, the final output automation will not initiate until it saw an indication that the trapping has been completed. And the trapping wouldn't be completed until the operator specifically checked that the trapping was done and has been checked, So it's kind of like a checklist that you see on almost everybody's job tickets. I've noticed that many customers, if you look at their job tickets they have for every job, they actually have all these different checklists of things you're supposed to check, the barcode, the trapping, the distortion. So you can actually create these same fields within Pinergy and just mirror that same kind of checklist and then make sure that nothing is output until all these things have been satisfied.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see what else we got here. Keep those questions coming. These are good. Next question is, oh yeah, real quick before we move on though, if you could give us an evaluation as to what you thought about today's program, just answer the questions down there at the bottom of your screen that will change right there. But just let us know what you thought of Dom's content as well as his wonderful presentation there, and of course just the logistics of getting logged in and everything. If you could give us an evaluation on that, we would really appreciate that as well. Okay. How are last-minute changes to the one-up file handled?
As far as one-up changes, last-minute changes, since we do work in PDF, that's a pretty common question. Customers would say, well, you know, I work in Illustrator, the file's in a PDF format and it's going through the Pinergy system. How do I come back into Illustrator once the file's already inside the workflow? And we actually have a few different solutions for that. You could actually pause the system with what we call PDF Editor, and it will take the file out of the Pinergy system into Illustrator. The file will be a protected format of the original file. It will then allow you to unprotect or make a change to only a specific element within the file, and then it will come back into Pinergy and update only the things that were changed while the system was paused, and then continue on with manufacturing.
Got it. Okay. Can you add white or spot varnish plates to a one-up file?
Yes. Again, this is a pretty common question because we are working in PDF and you feel like there's a lot of limitations if you work in the Acrobat environment. But in actuality, we've created several different plugins within Acrobat that allow for different tasks to be completed. And one in particular is the white plate, where you could actually open the PDF that's in production in Pinergy into Acrobat, use what we call Plate Builder. It's a plugin for Acrobat. It'll allow you to select any element or any graphic and then create a white plate or a spot varnish. You can then choke the white plate, or you can spread the varnish and make the elements and then add it to the white spot plate of that file, so it'll give you one composite white plate.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. Okay. Thanks. Let's see. All right. They keep coming in. Does the system support remote proofing? There you go.
Yes. So for remote proofing, you would use the Insight system. And the Insight system allows for soft proofing, where you could actually have color-calibrated monitors in different locations. So people are actually looking at color-accurate information on monitors. And the system actually has checks on it so that every monitor has to pass a certain pass-fail test before it actually allow you to view the file as a color-accurate proof. Using the system, you also have the ability to have remote proofing stations at different locations, and then Pinergy would then feed in information into these remote stations as a remote file and initiate a proof. And again, it works on a pass-fail test where the Pinergy system will actually send a pre-file that will check to make sure that the remote proofer is actually calibrated and is working properly, and then it will then initiate the remote proofing.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. We had several other questions come in that I haven't had a chance to put in the slides, so let me just drag those in here real quick, and maybe you could address those. Can this type of automation be applied to flexography?
Yes, it can. In fact, that's probably what the area I deal with the most is flexography. And what we find is the automation is invaluable in that it reduces the amount of decisions an operator has to make on output. We're not here to speed up the very complicated one-up preparation steps. We're really focusing on the output and decision-making processes. So when you're choosing reverse print, surface print, line strains, plates, distortion, all those many different variables and just complicated choices, those systems can all be automated into a single, so that every output has only one possible output condition.
Okay, that sounds good. Talking about MIS integrations, What MIS or business systems have integrated with the Kodak Unified Workflow?
We actually have several MIS systems that we work with where the system works transparently with the Prinergy system, where you can actually initiate tasks directly in PowerPack from the MIS system. The list is pretty extensive, but and we'd be happy to answer maybe some of those more specific MIS systems offline. But just know that there are many systems that directly interface with Prinergy, and the ones that don't, you can always initiate an XML file out of the MIS system that will then work within the Prinergy system. So there's kind of a patch system where an MIS system would write out a certain file format as an XML file, and then the XML file would be copied into a hot folder inside of Prinergy, which would then initiate the action.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. One other question. Let me grab that real quick. In automation of stepping, can you step different graphics per die line?
Yes. In fact, you can do that in any aspect of the step and repeat solutions. And if you're using Pandora in a user-driven mode, you can actually select every die station and apply a different graphic or the same graphic. So you can have lanes, or you can run them across in different ways. You have completely a user-driven system where the user can identify and apply any graphic they want in that system. When you're using the PLA system, the automated system, it's much the same way. You can actually apply what you would call assignments to a file, and it will then assign the file to specific lanes. So if you really think about this and say you have 3 lanes and 3 around, you have 9 different assignments. And then you can tell each graphic to be applied to a specific assignment. You could say graphic 1, apply to lane to position 1, 2, and 3. Graphic 2 to 4, 5, and 6, and then graphic 3 to 6, 7, and 8. And then all the lanes would be applied with different graphics at that point.
Got it. All right, Don. Well, I think that's all the questions we've got for today. So thank you very much for being with us. Laura, what do we got next on our agenda in terms of webinars? Can you help us with that?
I can't remember this. No, I can remember the specific topic. It is going to be at the end of this month. It is sponsored by McDermott, and it is going to be a seminar focusing on their Lux product line.